hello everyone. Welcome to my talk. It's called How Do Your Attacks with Misdirection Like Redacted? Right off the bat, let's talk about some general disclaimers here. All content on the slide is going to be available for you to download. Please review, share, whatever. And views that I'm expressing here are my own and are not representative of my employer. So don't hold them accountable for what I say. All right. So during this talk, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at techniques and methodologies applied by advanced persistent threat groups, and then how we as penetration testers, hackers, and whatever you are, can utilize those methodologies to, basically become more effective and have your campaign be more effective. So some of these groups, you may heard of the NSA, you may heard of GCHQ, the PLA Electronic Warfare Division, those kinds of groups, and we're going to take a quick look at what they do. So if you are interested in a good image of what these people look like, that's probably not it. But that's good representation. So a little background on who I am. I work as an IT security engineer / researcher at ReliaQuest. ReliaQuest is a company based in Tampa. We do a lot of IT security related things. So pen tests. We also provide managed security services. Hey, if you need someone to watch your logs for you, we can do that, among other things. I'm a university student, and I love security, man. Breaking things is so much fun. Securing things isn't as much fun, but hey, whatever. All right, quick shout outs. Let's give a round of applause to our B-sidesOrlando organizers because those guys have been awesome. Quick hello to my coworkers because you guys are awesome. Hello to anyone from DEF CON 813. You guys are awesome. I don't see any white hatters, but if there are any people from white hatters, hello. Hack Miami crew. And the two NSA agents in here, you guys bow your heads or whatever, but just give me a little wave. Right off the bat, let's talk about government capabilities and capabilities of these APT groups. I don't care who you are. The government's going to have more money than you. They're going to have more access than you could ever possibly hope to get. And they're going to have a lot more leverage than you could ever possibly hope to get. So don't get it in your head that you're ever going to be as good as them, because unless you're rich and really, 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 really rich, which you're not going to. But on the other hand, advanced persistent threat groups don't necessarily have to be tied to government. By the standard definition, advanced persistent threats are just hackers that are better than your regular script kiddies. So, yeah. All right. So, as a little forewarning, we're gonna be going to school right now. I'm gonna give you a little history on these, advanced APT groups or whatever you want to call them. Just bear with me. But at the same time, while we're doing this, kind of take note of, the evolution of their methodologies and their tactics and how it's changed over time. Starting in 1998, we'll take a look at this campaign called Moonlight Maze. Basically what happened was the US was parsing logs, whatever, and they noticed some electronic probing of, Pentagon systems, DoD systems, Department of Energy, and other research labs. Something interesting and something to take note of is that humans are the weakest link to security. We all know this. We have an intrinsic flaw built into our systems, and basically, we love routine and we hate change. Because of this fact, that enables blue teams to leverage things like pattern analysis and just help collect better intelligence against people. So with Moonlight Maze, some of the log patterns that they found were that, hey, these people are working in an office that kind of matches up in, all the activity that we're seeing is between 8 to 5 Moscow time. Now we're chasing these logs and we trace it back to a server in Moscow. I wonder who did that. In 2003, there was another campaign called Titan Rain. These attacks focused on defense contractors and DoD. And the attack vectors for these was social engineering emails. It's important to highlight this fact because they did an extensive amount of reconnaissance before performing their initial attacks. RECON is key to the success of these campaigns. Better RECON leads to better social engineering attacks. All the communications actually ended up getting traced back to China. Now, that's not to say that it was the Chinese government, but it got traced back to China. In 2006, there was Sykipot. This was a really, really sophisticated campaign that targeted key U.S. industries such as telecommunications, hardware manufacturers, defense contractors, and aerospace organizations. Unlike a lot of bots at the time, Sykipot clients didn't talk back to the command and control server at regular intervals. So it was a lot difficult, especially for the tools that existed at the time, to notice it initially. Most botnets, they'll communicate every 30 minutes back to the CnC server just to do a check back. If you just say, hey, check in 15 minutes, and then next check in 30 minutes, and then next check in 32 minutes, that really throws off just manual analysis that humans do, because you're looking for patterns, right? There were some other really interesting characteristics from the malware utilized in this campaign. They hid their DLLs that they used for exploitation as Microsoft DLLs. That's really, really easy stuff to do. Take a resource editor, right-click, say, hey, let's change it from saying, oh my God, I run an evil corporation.llc to Microsoft Corporation. That actually hides a lot better than you think it does, than you may consider. Exactly. It also had some other characteristics. It would timestamp itself to match the timestamp of SVC hosts. So, if you're looking for like time patterns, it kind of hides itself. And then it's got this really, really cool technique to perform persistence, which was kind of cutting edge at the time. So we can actually, see the actual code that it takes and the code execution here. That's just gibberish to me, so it doesn't really matter. The important part is what it does is it deletes its dropper, taskmost.exe, that it launches itself from the startup folder to remove any traces of persistency when ran. So when you boot up the computer, you can't see it. The end. When it's executed, a new thread is created that detects the ending of a Windows session. Only when Windows exits does it relocate itself to the startup folder to survive reboot. Since it only exists in the startup folder when required, live analysis techniques probably miss it when startup entries are inspected. And again, this is for the kind of analysts that are quickly looking through things, automated tools, and just, not paying a lot of attention. And that's just easy ways to hide from them. In 2009, there was a campaign named Ghostnet. Very, very extensive. And it's interesting because you can kind of tell a lot about, the malware operators, or about who's controlling and who's performing these campaigns by their targets. You'll see here that it had a pretty good list of targets in Taiwan, India, Thailand, Germany, Iran, and Tibetan exile centers. When you combine that with location analysis, like the fact that the CnC servers were hosted from the same region as a signals intelligence facility in China, you kind of learn a lot about what you can tell from the group. It had some other features. It included the ability to utilize audio and video recording from devices that it would find in the network. But it also had a really, really, really massive OPSEC failure. And OPSEC is another key thing to always be aware of. Essentially, some of the C2 servers that talked back had similar records in the host and the whois records. They were both registered by losttemp33@hotmail.com. You do a little bit of Google magic, and that leads you to a blog post on Windows hacking, which is on the left-hand side here. If you do a quick look at the profile, you can see that this guy's handle is Lost33, get his date of birth, place of residence, and his personal motto, the bored soldier swaying on an empty battlefield. The trail would normally go cold here because this guy never posted again, but kind of going back to the intrinsic flaw of security and how humans are stupid, let's do a Google search for this motto, and you come up to a new blog titled The Bored Soldier's Blog Space. At this point, assuming that they're the same person, he changes his handle from Lost33 to Damn Footman. But I know you're probably thinking, Jonathan, this is just speculation. I mean, this isn't concrete evidence. To you, I must say, you just activated my trap card. Basically, the fact of the matter is, it's somehow these two personas share the same motto, the same birthplace, and the same birthplace of residence. I mean, that kind of indicates that they're probably the same persons. But in all seriousness, don't cross-contaminate your handles. You can have a public handle. You can have a private handle. Make new handles for each campaign. Be random. OPSEC's key, but not key enough, apparently. In 2010, there was another one called Operation Aurora. Now, this one was kind of interesting just because of who they were targeting, right? They're looking for developers and development companies, large organizations that hosted, software code-based management. Google was one of the people that were targeted. And whenever they realized that, hey, these people were probably Chinese, they actually left the Chinese market because of it. Ultimately, the goal of this campaign was to put malicious code in the code base of solutions before they even left the market. You're downloading trusted programs, and now they're packed with malware that no one even knows about. That's the ultimate win at that point. The command and control servers were also hosted on Rackspace accounts, so they could post these up anywhere, and it was a lot harder to determine where these were coming from. Although looking at the source of the phishing emails, you could see that they were coming out of an SMTP server from a city in China, which just so happened to host an intelligence facility. And then there's 2010, with one of my favorite campaigns, Stuxnet. These targeted the Iranians and their nuclear control facilities. It was amazing. It's a very, very sophisticated campaign that supposedly has some origins of American and or Israeli, characteristics. It's a self-cleaning malware, and by exploiting 4 0 days, it would cause nuclear centrifuges to spin really, really fast and pretty much explode. It had 3 modules. One that was the worm that executes routines related to the main payload, a link file that automatically executes the propagated copies of the worm, and a rootkit component responsible for hiding malicious files and processes, preventing the detection and presence of Stuxnet. The other really cool thing about this that scared the bejesus out of everyone was the fact that it infiltrated an air-gapped network. You're not going to network your uranium enrichment facilities. That's just probably not smart when you're running infrastructure. That scared a lot of people, and initially most people thought the initial attack vector must have been, they found some guy that had access to a USB and that was able to drop a USB in there. What people don't normally talk about with Stuxnet was how did that USB manage to get infected. That leads us to talking about the supply chain attack vector, which is just beautiful. So essentially, let's see here. You have this organization called Fulan Technic International. What they do is they create automated systems for Iranian industrial facilities. Next month, the group called Neta International Group, who's a component supplier for industrial systems, specifically Iranian industrial systems, and they also make products with potential military applications. And then the month after that, Control Ghostar Jahid Company, who's an industrial control systems vendor who sells to Iran, was hit with Stuxnet as well. Most people think that Neta and Ghostar were used as like intelligence gathering hubs, which makes sense. The entire time that you're in there, you're kind of seeing who are these guys selling to, and essentially these guys all sell to the Iranians. They all are in the same space, so you kind of think they're all talking to each other. And when you have a foothold in all of them, that really, really helps the amount of reconnaissance that you can do, and you're able to collect much more effective and actionable intelligence. Finally, a year afterwards, it hits Kala Electric, who's the developer of the centrifuges that were targeted in Stuxnet. So going back to the code-based attacks, it's like, it really kind of makes sense as to how all of this happened. You know, they're going to send a developer to update firmware on these centrifuges at some point, right? USB key, infected code base, goes in, Stuxnet worm, destroys these centrifuges, deletes itself, boom, everyone's happy. Well, so with the nuclear facilities air gapped, the attacks were conducted on the assumption that the firms would exchange information with clients, thereby facilitating the attack on Iran's nuclear program. And then in 2012, there was another one called Flame. This one was actually discovered by the Iranian CERT team, and some interesting changes took place here. There were some hints from taking some hints from Ghostnet. Flame had the ability to collect information via Bluetooth devices around compromised hosts. So if your computer had Bluetooth in it and you had Bluetooth enabled on your phone, I'm now able to pull info off of your phone via its Bluetooth. Let's assume for a second that the creators of Stuxnet were American, and due to the fact that Flame shares some code with Stuxnet, it's really interesting to see that the location of the C2 servers were not, for once, in their presumed location of origin. Another really interesting feature of the C2 panel for Flame was the way it was disguised. It's made to look completely benign to any passerby. So if these are hosted on VPSs or like Rackspace accounts somewhere, and then they're going to say, oh, this server seems to be doing something funky as the Rackspace system administrator, I'm going to peer through it and see if I see anything out of ordinary. Looking at this panel, you see things like, it doesn't use botnet, oh my god, Ultimate Botnet 3000. Uses common words like data, upload, download, client, news, blog, ads. It just disguises it and makes it look not threatening. This was likely done to deceive those guys. In 2013, there was another campaign called Rain. Awesome, really, really incredibly sophisticated malware. If you ever get a chance, read the analysis paper on it because it's really cool. Very highly modular, uses the same technique to mimic Microsoft drivers, and it had a pretty wide target. Specifically, a lot of those targets just happen to be in telecommunications. So you're kind of attacking infrastructure at that point. It employed a lot of stealth and a lot of anti-forensics, and it also used a custom-built virtual file system and even alternative encryption, just encryption types that weren't commonly used or just slightly modified the encryption that was being used. Another key thing to look at is the fact that it used multiple means and protocols to talk back to the CnC server. So it's not just talking back over IRC or P2P or whatever. It's using ICMP, cookies, IRC, P2P. It's just using a multitude of protocols so that it's a lot harder to figure out how data is being exfiltrated. It remained undetected for a long time because of, they try to hide it as much as they could. We're going to give a special mention to the Belgacom hack in 2013 that was unofficially done by the GCHQ. They're using a little bit more interesting attack vector. Basically, what happened is they assumed that they compromised the backbone of the internet, right, or whatever in front of Belgacom. They pretty much just man in the middle everything. So they were looking at system administrators and they said, hey, I see you're going to LinkedIn. Before you go to LinkedIn, I'm going to intercept your request, upload a little bit of execute code that's going to execute, and then pass you through to LinkedIn. Oh, and now I have a shell in your box. Sorry. You can literally inject code in transit transparently by intercepting the request. And all you got to do is control network infrastructure. Another key point is the fact that they performed really, really extensive reconnaissance. Reconnaissance leads to success. That's a fact. Use reconnaissance. Yeah. All right. History lesson's done. You guys can wake up now. Let's take a quick peek at some of the methodologies and just properties of these attacks, and then how we can use them to hack all the things. Rule number one, it's the location of your C2 server. Don't put it where you're attacking from. That's retarded. Even if you're using jump boxes but my C2 server's right next to me in Florida, is that really the smartest thing to do? Just like imagine if the US launched their attacks from an IP address located in Fort Meade. Gee, I wonder who did that. So for penetration testers, that means don't use the host name of your botnet as c2.yourcompanyname.com. That's not very smart. And for governments, host that out of the country. You have multiple partners. Why don't you host your attack from Sweden or host your attack from, I don't know, a server you probably owned in China? And for malware operators, you guys are black hats. Hack people. China, many vulnerable systems. Own them and use them. VPS operators have been doing this for years. Take hints from them. For extra kudos, and this is really cool, you guys can take a line from the NSA's Tailored Access Operations Group. They use a technique that it's called a fourth party collection, called Defiant Warrior. And essentially, they penetrate while you're getting penetrated, right? They'll take a look at existing botnet servers and C2 servers. There's plenty out there. People are running Zeus botnets. People are running Pony, Sol, or whatever. They hack into those, hide their botnet inside of it, and now attribution gets shifted, right? Say the botnet that you're running gets compromised, or somehow it gets discovered. There's already someone else running another botnet on that C2 server. They're going to take the blame for it because, you're running a publicly known botnet. Obviously, our data is being communicated back to you. You must be at fault. That will really hinder the investigation process. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely some risks associated with this technique, like the fact that your campaign might not last as long. Like the fact that your campaign might not last as long. But it really helps out in the long run, especially if they're really hot on your tail. They're going to get very distracted just by looking at the existing botnet. Mask more comprehensive forms of penetration over someone else's form of penetration. Again, going back to this very important key, RECON matters. Intelligence in war is just the same as intelligence cybersecurity. Extensive reconnaissance will raise the effectiveness of your operations, and this is especially true for phishing campaigns. You can't just send people, hey, click me and you're good to go. The more tailored and more normal you make something look, the more effective it's going to be. Recon should also be something that you perform constantly throughout your operation. You shouldn't be doing recon at the very beginning and say, okay, spear phishing's done. Now we'll launch an attack. When you own a box, start performing recon from that vantage point. Start performing recon from the next vantage point. And just really build a solid database of information. And it allows you to execute attacks much more effectively. Another key characteristic of these campaigns has been patience. Let's look at the Stuxnet group. They waited an entire year before commencing the final part of their attack. There's a lot of reasons that there's a reason that many of these penetrations were able to last as long as they were, and it wasn't just from Viagra. Slow and methodical movements tend to be much more pleasurable for an attacker in the long run, so tread lightly. And anti-forensics, one of my favorites. So there's some common anti-forensic techniques shared across all of these, different campaigns. They utilize secure delete, shred, overwrite a file with 0, and it's suddenly nearly impossible to recover. For the RAIN C2 servers, the way that they were discovered, they were actually able to recover an image from the VPSs that they were hosting from the VPS provider, because they were like, hey, we noticed that these were being used in a malware campaign. Can you provide us with an image of the box? And they said, sure. What the C2 operators actually ended up doing initially was they disabled all the logs, including web server logs. So there was no logs whatsoever located on the box. You might think, but they have the image and they can sinkhole the campaign, whatever. That won't give them a history of previous clients. So say, for example, you had deleted bots that you compromised earlier. You're not going to be able to trace that back, and that really helps hinder the investigation. Masquerade DLLs, masquerade the names of your functions, and inject drivers as something more legitimate than, oh, hi, I'm a malware operator, LLC. Hide your panel in plain sight. Take a hint from RAIN. Google dorks are awesome. Start looking for bots, and you'll pretty much find a botnet panel. Don't make it so obvious. If it says ultimate uber elite botnet, you're just as bad as the people who overuse cloud. Also, it's a lot easier to hide from web crawlers. Now we're going to talk about encryption and encapsulation. We'll take a quick look at FASHIONCLEFT, which is probably one of the coolest things that's ever come out of NSA's Tailored Access Operations, which is their penetration group. Basically, what this protocol does is it takes a copy or a clone of a host packet, appends metadata, and redirects copied packets to a listening post or another host. Normal traffic still goes out from the host, but at the same time it splits off, at another hop, obviously outside of the, of your target organization, and then it splits off and sends the data to the C2 server. At that point, the investigators can't do anything. If they start splitting information in transit, there's not a whole lot that can be done because the device that's splitting the information is no longer in control of your target. So they can't pull any logs off of it, and analysis stops. It also had a way to authenticate the data of copy packets and help ensure integrity. Now, I'm sure there's not a lot of us here that can can make something like that, but it's definitely something cool to think about. Kind of see if you'd ever be able to apply similar techniques. The key thing is don't get frustrated. Encapsulate your data. HTTP communications should always be encrypted with at least SSL, no matter what. Even if you can't exfil it over 443, exfil it over 80. It'll help hide your attack no matter what. If an analyst is going to be looking at this data, all he's going to see is, oh, there's junk, random packets going over port 80. Sure, that might raise a red flag, but it's better than saying, oh, this is obviously malware data going over port 80. DNS exfiltration is sometimes easy to detect, and you'll typically see a lot of invalid requests to a single domain. Just use multiple domains. Split it. And always use the right protocol for the right target. So if you see SSH traffic coming off of a Windows box, that's probably not normal. Or looking at a marketing user, right? They're never going to use SSH. They're probably never going to use IRC. So don't use IRC or SSH as a communication protocol. And you know how you find that out? By doing your reconnaissance. If you want to get a little more advanced, you can use other special techniques. Split data exfiltration across multiple protocols. On one hand, you'll send it out over HTTP cookies. On the other hand, you'll split a file, send the other half of the file out over IRC. It makes it a lot harder for an analyst to put the information back together and say, here's what they stole. It's a lot easier to do whenever you can provide a unique session identifier, but you have to be able to hide the fact that it's a unique session identifier. Does that make sense? At that point, on your C2 server, you'll just be able to rebuild them by joining the session identifiers. You can even send both information to two different servers and then reassemble it on another. And then get the most out of your Etsy hosts. Change your C2 server to point to Facebook. I mean, as the data gets sent over in information, it's going to be seen as requests sent to Facebook.com, not requests sent to evilc2server.com. It's not 100% effective, and some automated tools might catch it, some not. But humans make errors a lot of times. They're just going to see host name, facebook.com, okay, that's legitimate, and continue scanning on. Utilize the weaknesses in humans, right? Another key is to aim higher. Expand the scope of your targets. Key targets that these APT groups are targeting is infrastructure. Stop looking just at clients and servers. Look at routers, switches, firewalls. If you own those, you own everything, because you can completely control the flow of communication between your target. Hit them where it hurts. Source control management. I mean, looking at, are they using any applications that they've developed for internal usage? Are the system administrators hosting it on an internal Git server? Edit the scripts that they're using. You should be attacking everything in your pen test. Don't just focus on that. Just focus on one thing. And then watering hole attacks. This isn't as applicable for penetration testers, but look at, because you're restricted by anything that's in scope. So you want to look at internal services being used, intranet portals, help desk portals, file shares. Edit those. Hide your malware within those. For black hats, attack whatever. Do your recon. Figure out what sites and services they're using. Figure out if any of them are vulnerable. Own it. Own them. End of story. And finally, get really creative with some supply chain attacks. There was a story a few years ago about a guy that targeted the system administrator during a penetration test by sending him a USB keyboard that had a keylogger hidden inside of it. And it was one of the state-of-the-art Logitech ones. Oh, it's a mechanical keyboard. Thank you for being a valued Logitech customer. We've decided to send you this gift as a promotion. System administrators, everyone loves free stuff. They're going to take use of it, take advantage of it, and now all his keystrokes are being sent out. That's awesome. Utilize that. Another key characteristic of these government groups is that they're intercepting routers and delivery to target locations and then planting malware before they arrive. No, tampering with mail is illegal, but who cares? Also, aim lower. Firmware-based attacks, hard drive attacks, rootkits, they're way harder to do, but they're really incredibly awesome, and they allow for much, much longer persistence. So we take a look at a program like NSA's iRate Monk. It's used by their tailored access operations groups, and it provides application persistence by targeting the MBR. At that point, even if you wipe the OS, it doesn't matter. The computer's still owned. So the next key point is to throw the trail on your tail. There's a lot of pattern-based analysis that goes into identifying who an operator is. Writing style gives a lot away. There's an application called if you go to the Hemingway app, what you can do is you can take a block of text, paste into it, and it'll say, you should probably change these. Essentially, Hemingway app looks at your writing style and says, this is way too advanced for 5th graders. You can dumb this sentence down, eliminate this sentence, dumb this down, dumb this down. Change that around, and suddenly it doesn't look like you wrote it anymore. Change your identity. Use multiple handles for multiple campaigns. Don't use your one handle for everything. That can be traced back to you. It's easy. FakeNameGenerator.com. Click generate, click randomize, and now you're a whole new person. And don't cross-contaminate your handles. If you can have a public handle that you do for IT research or IT security research, whatever. Hey, you'll release your advisories that you discover over that. But if you're hacking stuff as your night job, don't use the same handle for that. So if you guys have any questions, there's the best ways to contact me are over Jabber or Twitter. It would be after the talk, but you guys have any questions now? I will put that on my blog, but that's a great point.
I was going to say that you did a nice presentation. There is one thing that I would kind of disagree with, though, because the Etsy host thing, that's like a huge red flag. Change the DNS server under Etsy Resolve.
Even better.
Then be the DNS server, because that's rarely ever detected.
Even better. Even better. That goes back to the point I was saying. Expand your targets. Control infrastructure, and you control everything, right? Further questions?
You can also probably hack the router and redirect Google DNS to your own server.
Even better. All right. So yeah, thanks for attending my talk, and this has been Enjoy B-sidesOrlando.